They say hope is a quiet thing, but for me, it was deafening. Every month for 5 years, I lived in a cycle of hope and heartbreak. I would mark the days on my calendar, track every symptom, light every candle of belief, only to end each month in quiet tears, clutching another single-lined pregnancy test in the bathroom of a house that felt emptier with every passing year. I'm Sophia Lynn. I'm 40 years old. I live in California, work as a senior accountant, and have been married to Ethan for almost 8 years. We met in our early 30s, full of life and plans and dreams. Back then, everything felt like it was unfolding exactly as it should. Except for the one thing we wanted most, a child. After the first year of trying, people said, "It'll happen when you stop stressing." After the second, it became, "Have you thought about seeing a specialist?" By year 3, the silence was louder. Friends stopped inviting me to baby showers. I stopped checking social media altogether. Each ultrasound post and rainbow baby announcement felt like a dagger. We tried everything: diet changes, fertility yoga, hormone treatments. 3 rounds of IVF left me bruised, physically and emotionally. The injections, the hormones, the endless clinic visits, and still nothing. One doctor even suggested we start considering other paths. I knew what he meant. Adoption. Or just giving up. Ethan was supportive, at least on the surface. But I could feel it, the strain, the shift in his eyes when we sat in silence at the dinner table. He didn't know how to comfort me anymore, and I stopped trying to explain the hollow ache I carried. We were growing apart in the very space where we had once dreamed of a nursery. It was my mother who refused to let go of hope. A traditional Taiwanese woman, she believes deeply in the old ways, in harmony, in nature, in unseen forces. One evening, while I sat listlessly at her kitchen table, she placed a small fabric pouch in my hands. "Drink this," she said gently, "boil it every night. Don't stop. Trust me." Inside were dried herbs, red dates, angelica root, goji berries, and others I couldn't even name. I stared at her, exhausted. "Mom, it's not that simple." She touched my cheek. "Neither is life. But sometimes simple things carry powerful answers." I didn't believe it, not really. But I was too tired to argue. Too broken to refuse. So I took the pouch home and made the tea. It was bitter, earthy, strange. But I drank it, night after night. And then, in the middle of a random Wednesday, something changed. My period was late. Not just by a day, but by a week. I didn't dare get excited. I had seen this before. Late periods were just cruel tricks my body liked to play. Still, I found myself walking into the drugstore, buying a test, and hiding it in my bag like it was contraband. I didn't even wait until morning, just rushed into the bathroom, heart pounding. 2 minutes. 1 line. Then, a second. I blinked. My breath caught in my throat. I shook the test. Looked again. 2 lines. I sank onto the cold tile floor. My hands were shaking. I wanted to scream, to cry, to laugh, but all I could do was sit there, holding this tiny stick, stunned into stillness. Was it real? I took another test. Then another. All positive. After 5 years of silence, hope wasn't just a whisper anymore, it was a roar. But as I would soon learn, not everyone around me was ready to celebrate that miracle. When I finally stood up from the bathroom floor, I still couldn't feel my legs. My fingers gripped the edge of the sink for balance as my mind tried to catch up with my heart. It felt like I had just stepped out of a dream, or into one. The test still sat on the counter, stubbornly displaying those 2 magical, impossible lines. My first instinct was to call Ethan. But as I reached for my phone, something inside me hesitated. Over the years, I had played this moment in my head hundreds of times. Sometimes he cried, sometimes he laughed, sometimes he dropped everything and scooped me up in his arms. But in all those imagined versions, I had never once felt fear. Now, strangely, I did. Not because I thought he would be angry, Ethan wasn't that kind of man. But because time had changed us. The pressure of those 5 silent years had stretched and worn down something between us. We still loved each other, yes. But love no longer flowed freely, it had to be coaxed, managed, tiptoed around. I waited until he got home from work. He walked in wearing his usual navy button-down, scrolling through something on his phone, his briefcase sliding off his shoulder. "Hey," I said, trying to sound normal. "Can we talk?" He looked up. "Everything okay?" I nodded. "I just have something to show you." I handed him the test. He stared at it for a long time. Long enough that I thought maybe he didn't understand what he was looking at. Then he glanced at me. "Is this real?" I smiled. "I took 3 more. All the same." A pause. Then his arms wrapped around me. At first, I let myself melt into him, absorbing the weight of the moment. But even in that closeness, I noticed something off. His grip wasn't tight. His breathing wasn't steady. He pulled back just slightly and said, "Wait, is this from your mom's tea?" I blinked. "What?" "The herbs. You've been drinking them, right?" "Yes, but what does that matter?" I mean, do we even know what was in them?" "You didn't tell your OB, did you?" The air shifted. The warmth of the moment cooled. I felt my heart sink. "Are you saying you think this isn't safe?" "I'm saying," he said carefully, "that maybe we should be cautious. We don't know what kind of compounds were in there. What if something—" I stepped back. "Ethan, do you hear yourself? We've been trying for 5 years. And now that we have a positive test, your first reaction is to doubt it?" He rubbed the back of his neck. "I'm not doubting you. I'm just trying to be logical. Responsible." But it didn't feel like responsibility. It felt like doubt. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling while Ethan slept next to me, his back turned. I thought about everything we had endured together, the late-night tears, the painful procedures, the hope that had worn thin. I thought his arms would feel like home when this day finally came. But instead, they felt hesitant. The next day, I told my mother. She screamed. Loudly. Joyfully. Then she cried so hard I could barely understand her over the phone. "You must come over," she said. "Right now. I have something for you." When I arrived, she handed me another bundle of herbs wrapped in red cloth and a thin crimson string. "This is for protection," she whispered, tying the string gently around my wrist. "You and the baby are blessed. But blessings must be protected." For the first time in years, I saw her eyes shine not with worry, but with peace. She believed. Fully. Unconditionally. And that meant the world to me. But the more I leaned into her joy, the more I noticed Ethan pulling away, not in anger, not even in fear, but in discomfort. He didn't say it out loud, but I knew what he was thinking. He didn't trust the tea. He didn't trust the process. Maybe, he didn't even trust me. And somewhere in the shadows of this new, delicate happiness, something else was beginning to stir. Something I hadn't seen coming. For the first time in years, my mother's face glowed. She had always been a quiet woman, strong in her silence, composed in crisis, but the moment she stepped through our front door and saw me standing there, hands folded over my belly, she wept. Not the kind of weeping you reserve for grief or confusion, but the kind that comes after years of prayer finally answered. She didn't say a word at first. Just pulled me into her arms and held on, as if I might vanish if she let go. "I knew it," she whispered into my hair. "I knew this child would come to you." I don't think I had fully cried until then. But in my mother's arms, I did. I told her how scared I was. How unsure everything suddenly felt. How Ethan had reacted. She pulled back, wiped my cheeks, and said, "A man raised on rules will always fear miracles." I almost laughed. It sounded like something out of a folk tale. But there was truth in it. She brought with her a new pouch of herbs and an old red envelope. Inside was a jade pendant, smooth and cool to the touch. "This was mine when I carried you," she said. "Now it's hers." I held it tightly, clutching it over my belly. "Hers?" "You'll know," she smiled. "Mother always knows." Later that evening, Ethan came home to the smell of herbs simmering in the kitchen. He paused in the doorway, watching as my mom stirred the pot like some ancient priestess performing a rite. "Hi, Mom," he said politely, with the stiff kind of smile that hides 100 thoughts. My mother turned, smiling softly. "The baby is strong. You must trust that." Ethan gave a non-committal nod, then turned to me. "Soph, can we talk?" We went into the bedroom, closing the door behind us. He sat down on the edge of the bed and rubbed his temples. "I don't want to sound like the bad guy here. But your mom's really into this mystical stuff. I just don't want us to do anything risky." "Risky?" I repeated. "You think drinking herbal tea is riskier than pumping synthetic hormones into my body for years?" His mouth opened, but nothing came out. "I understand you're scared, Ethan. I am too. But that tea, that mystical stuff, is part of who I am. Who we are. And maybe, just maybe, that's why this miracle finally happened." He sighed, reached for my hand. "I just want to do this the right way. Doctors. Checkups. Nutrition. Not rituals and stories." "We can do both," I said. "Science doesn't have to cancel out belief." We didn't speak much the rest of that night. But at least he didn't ask me to stop drinking the tea again. The next morning, I felt a shift in the air. It wasn't anything dramatic. Just a sense, like standing on the edge of something fragile. My phone buzzed with a text from my sister-in-law, Lila. "Mom told me the news." "Congrats." That was all. Lila and I had always had a quiet, mutual respect. We weren't best friends, but we'd shared holiday dinners, wedding planning stories, and fertility journeys in hushed late-night conversations. I hesitated before replying. "Thank you. I know this might be hard to hear." "I understand completely." There was no response. Later that day, I saw she'd viewed my Instagram story, just a blurry snapshot of the herbal tea beside a journal entry. No heart reaction. No comment. And for the first time since I saw those 2 pink lines, I felt the ground beneath me shift. Someone, wasn't happy about this pregnancy. And I had no idea how deep it would go. I used to think that joy, when it finally arrived, would silence all the pain. But I was wrong. Joy, especially the long-awaited kind, doesn't erase the scars. It only exposes where they still hurt, and sometimes, it reminds others of what they don't have. Lila and I had always shared a quiet kind of closeness, the kind born out of mutual heartbreak. We were 2 women in a family full of baby announcements and noisy nephews, clinging to our unspoken bond, the grief of childlessness. We both knew the shame of dodging awkward questions during family dinners. "When are you going to give us a little one? You're not getting any younger." We both knew the look of pity in the eyes of well-meaning aunts. The silence in our husbands' voices when hope turned into another blank test. So I thought, foolishly, maybe, that she would understand. But the distance started almost immediately. She stopped answering my texts. She unfollowed me on social media. Not blocked. Not anything obvious. Just gone. Like I was something she didn't want to see anymore. At first, I told myself she needed space. That maybe she was hurting in a way I couldn't imagine, and I should give her grace. But then, I received the message. It came one evening, just as I was preparing dinner. Ethan was late getting home. I was alone in the kitchen, hands still wet from rinsing vegetables when my phone buzzed. "Lila. Sophia, I need to say something. I've been holding it in, but I can't anymore. What you're doing is dangerous." You're pregnant, and you're still drinking those weird teas from your mom? You didn't even think about how that might affect the baby? My heart pounded as I read her words. It's irresponsible. You act like this is some miracle, but what if it ends up hurting the baby? What if you're setting yourself up for heartbreak, and everyone else has to watch it happen all over again? I've been through enough. Please think about what you're doing. I just stood there. The phone cold in my hand. I didn't know what hurt more, the judgment, or the implication that I didn't deserve this happiness. That night, I didn't say anything to Ethan. I couldn't. But 2 days later, while we were brushing our teeth side by side, he mentioned it. I talked to Daniel, he said. Daniel, Lila's husband. Ethan's brother. He said Lila's been crying a lot lately. I kept my face neutral. I can imagine. This must be hard for her. Ethan looked at me through the mirror. He said she's really concerned about that tea. There it was. I put my toothbrush down. I'm already seeing a doctor, I said. I'm taking vitamins. I stopped drinking the tea a week ago, not because of her, but because I'm doing everything I can to protect this baby. I know, he said softly. I think Lila's hurting. And when people hurt, they lash out. That's not an excuse, I replied, my voice sharper than I intended. I didn't steal anything from her. I didn't cheat. I didn't lie. I just got lucky. He nodded but didn't answer. And in that silence, I felt another wall go up between us. The next weekend was my in-laws' anniversary party, a backyard gathering with catered food, twinkling lights, and the usual chaos of extended family. I debated not going. Ethan said he'd understand. But some stubborn part of me, the same part that had endured 5 years of empty cribs and fake smiles, refused to hide. I wore a soft blue dress that gently curved around my growing belly, now showing just enough to be noticed. My mother gave me a tiny gold pin shaped like a lotus flower and whispered, "Let them see." And they did. Whispers followed me from the moment I stepped onto the patio. Some smiled. Some gave tight, polite nods. But the tension was there, quiet, crawling beneath the surface. Lila was already there, standing stiffly beside the drink table. Her eyes met mine only for a second, then flicked away. No smile. No nod. Nothing. An hour in, as I poured myself a glass of lemonade, she came up beside me. You look, well, she said, voice flat. Thanks, I replied, cautious. She leaned in slightly, keeping her voice low. Just, don't expect everyone to clap and cheer. Some of us are still bleeding while you're celebrating. I didn't respond. There was nothing I could say that wouldn't make things worse. She walked away before I could even find the words. And I realized something then, something that stung more than her bitterness. Not everyone will be happy for your miracle. Some people will resent it. Others will question it. Some will even try to tear it down, not because they're evil, but because they're hurting, too. But what I hadn't realized, what I was only just beginning to feel, was that her pain wasn't just sadness. It was jealousy. And in that jealousy, something darker was beginning to take shape. A week after the anniversary party, the silence in our home wasn't just emotional, it was physical. Ethan had started working late. Or staying later. Or just being gone. When I asked if everything was okay, he gave half smiles and tired nods. When I mentioned Lila's comment at the party, he shrugged and said, she didn't mean it that way. But I knew she did. And worse, I knew he knew it too. One morning, I went in for a routine checkup. My OB smiled as she placed the cold gel on my belly, and the monitor lit up. There's your baby, she said. Heartbeats strong. It was the first time I cried at an ultrasound, not because I was scared, but because I realized how alone I felt in that moment of joy. I sent Ethan the video. He replied hours later with a thumbs up emoji. No words. That weekend, things came to a head. My mother came over with another protective charm, a tiny beaded anklet she had made with quiet care, and while she was tying it gently around my ankle, Ethan walked in. He stopped. Stared. What is that? It's for peace, my mother said softly. Ethan exhaled sharply. Can we stop with the rituals? It's getting out of hand. I stood. She's trying to help. She's not a doctor, Sophia. No, I said, but she's a mother. He froze. Then came the moment I didn't expect. I spoke to Lila again, he said. She thinks you're still drinking the tea. I'm not, I said calmly. I stopped. Weeks ago. She's worried about the baby. I laughed, bitterly. She's not worried about the baby. She's angry that it isn't hers. Ethan's jaw tensed. That's not fair. What's not fair, I snapped, is spending 5 years longing for this, and the minute it finally happens, I'm being told to feel guilty about it. He ran a hand through his hair. No one's asking you to feel guilty. Aren't they? I asked. Because that's exactly what it feels like. Like I don't deserve to be happy. Like I should apologize for finally being chosen. My mother stepped back, quietly leaving the room. The silence that followed was crushing. I'm tired, Ethan, I whispered. I'm tired of hiding my joy. I'm tired of pretending this baby is some sort of accident we should be ashamed of. I waited for her. I fought for her. And I won't let anyone, not Lila, not even you, steal that from me. He looked at me. And for once, he didn't have a response. Days passed. Slowly, awkwardly. Until one afternoon, I received a message that changed everything. It was from Lila. I saw your mom at the market. She told me you're due in February. Congratulations. I mean it this time. I stared at the screen for a long while. There was something different in the tone, something softer. And then, another message. I'm sorry. I was hurting. And I took it out on you. I didn't cry. I didn't text back right away. But I showed the message to Ethan. He looked at it, then at me. She'll never fully get it, he said. But she's trying. So should you, I replied. He nodded. We welcomed our daughter, Mei Lin, on a quiet February morning. She was tiny, pink, and loud. Her first cry was the sweetest sound I've ever heard. My mother was the first to hold her. She placed the jade pendant gently around her neck and whispered a blessing in Mandarin. Ethan stood behind me, arms around my shoulders. And for the first time in months, his grip was firm. Present. Lila sent a bouquet. No card. But I knew. The miracle had come. Not in the form we expected. Not through the channels we were told to trust. But she came, through pain, through silence, through tea and prayers and tension. And she was worth it all.